Hello and welcome to Conversations With, our monthly series of informal and enlightening conversations between the leading edge teacher and author, Jim Self, and some of today's most progressive and connected teachers, channels, and authors. Now, here's our host, Jim Self.
So let's take that to another level. You have tuned the radio station into the Arcturians and into the Hathors, and the Hathors and you have been able to utilize your voice and toning and sound ability in a really quite a wonderful way. And yet, of late, the Hathors are, not of late, over the last couple of years, they've been talking about these various nodes and points of chaos, and also, and most recently, talking about the challenges to the Earth because of the Fukushima nuclear situation. Can you talk a little bit about that whole process of evolving, focusing on the shifting changes and on the Earth and some of the challenges?
Yeah, well, they have an interesting take on things from my perspective, and I'm sure they think I have a very interesting perspective from their position. From the very beginning of my first contacts with them, which were like in the early 90s, and I really had a difficult time accepting this reality, but that's a whole other story. But after I integrated this into my mental life, one of the first things they said was that we were in time acceleration and that there would be increasing levels of chaos. And this would come about as a result of the accelerated evolution of the cosmos. And so I thought, well, that's a nice little concept. But it didn't really become clear until about, as you said, 2 or 3 years ago, they started talking about chaotic nodes and naming it. And a chaotic node in its most simplest form is when you have any system that changes to a higher level or even a lower level of functioning goes through a period of chaos or perturbation where the system, the information flows within that system that existed before now start breaking apart and things don't work the way they used to. And so every system that goes to a higher level or even a lower level will go through a period of chaos. So a chaotic node is when you have multiple layers of chaos. Just as an example, this happened like several months ago, and there was a traffic jam, and the traffic lights went out in a major city, and people's computers were crashing, and there happened to be a solar flare activity, and there were mass beachings of whales, all types of things that were seemingly unrelated. The Hathors say these are related in that they are an orchestration of different layers of chaos, and they crescendo and then create a big wave of chaos. And they say that we're in a chaotic node, what they call a chaotic node at the moment, which when the sun flipped its magnetic field, that was the signature that we're now moving into another expression of the chaotic node. But it simply means more shit hits the fan per hour, to put it on street talk.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So when they say that sun flipping, is it just perceived as another chaotic node, or is that the kind of, from their point of view, the generation of this new consciousness as a foundation template that we are now entering into? It's almost like the night turns into day is how I've seen that flipping of the sun and what it's bringing us into. But it's a long-term.
It is a long-term process.
Yeah.
Whenever we start talking about this territory, I like to have people have what I call the imaginary box. So if I say something that doesn't make sense, they just toss it in the box and don't give it authority, but test it through their logic, their knowledge of life, their values. Because some of the things that the Hathors have said were pretty far out. And so just as we talk about this territory, I think every listener might want to have their box by their side. Having said that, the Hathors' position is that the actual impetus is coming from the galactic central sun, which is a black hole. And it is these energies are being broadcast and then hit the sun, and then from the sun it emanates out into our solar system. And so that's how they view what's the sun is like one of the first signs, but it's actually originating from the center of the galaxy.
Yes, that's consistent with my awareness. And do they talk in terms of these timelines all converging, as you said earlier, but there's multiple timelines and multiple layering of consciousness depending on how one puts their finger in that light socket or that opportunity, depending on the situation. Do they talk about those multiple time layerings that are occurring?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like we have multiple timelines going on. And in fact, driving back to the place where we're staying to have the interview, Judy and I were talking. She said, do you experience multiple matrices and dimensions going on simultaneously more than you did before? And I said, absolutely. So we're driving the car, but there's all these other layers. And when you get into the emotional atmosphere of the planet, it's like there's so many possibilities of one can be in despair or ecstasy. One can be in communion with Earth, or one can be in despair of Earth. And this all has to do with vibrational niches. And these are all distinct timelines according to the Hathors. And we can, whether we do it or not is a different story, but they say we have the capacity to choose which timeline we're on, and we're choosing even if we're not aware that we're choosing.
Yes.
By what vibrational domain we're operating in.
Yeah, that's real consistent. And one of the things that makes this very exciting for me when I watch, one of my abilities is to be very conscious in the sleep state, and it's not the astral plane. It's really kind of from the fullness of who you are on the edge of this bubble of consciousness that the physicalness plays in. But it's a very fascinating thing watching this layering, and the one piece that seems to be most consistent is that if a person can be able to be in present time and observe without immediately engaging in what they observe, the ability to pause and then step into the chosen layer of time or experience becomes very available. But what happens is those emotions, particularly those emotions, those gifts that we were talking about earlier on, all of the you're not okay stuff, begins to have its reactionary impulse as that imprint kind of engages into the mental or emotional structure. But when I watch people pause and observe, all of a sudden the fear, you can say, well, this isn't going to be good, but you don't have that same reactionary fear that engages you with it or has you start running before you think. But with a piece from the etheric space that is most consistent, it's like a wonderful dance where you can go in different directions. But if you choose, it's like climbing a multiple staircase. And it's really quite an adventure from watching it done from that sleep space. And the adventure could be exactly the same here if we really kind of manage our thoughts and emotions and choose. So that was the one consistent piece I watch as I watch people move in and out of these various timelines that we're all starting to play in.
Well, with the Hathors, one thing I very much appreciate about them is that they're non-interventionalist in that they affirm sovereign will of each individual. And so it's up to each individual person, human being, to change our lives in the ways that we choose to. And all the Hathors offer are their perspectives on how you can do that more elegantly and efficiently. And for them, it's through vibrational states and what they call coherent emotions. And the more often we can enter a coherent emotional space, we are in a field of greater possibilities in terms of creating outcomes, both in terms of certainly dream time that you were talking about earlier and the sleep yoga that's accessible, and in our lives. So for them, it's about really the question of what vibration will you choose.
If you enjoyed this highlight from Conversations With, join Jim Self live on the Awakening Zone Network. That's awakeningzone.com. If you're looking for free tools for your personal and spiritual growth, if you want to be who you came here to be, visit masteringalchemy.com, where you can learn more about Jim, his work, and future guests. Our theme song is Hands of Love by Barry Goldstein. May you experience laughter and grace on your journey home.